Hello and welcome to another episode of the Viva Bastardo show, part of the Hagerty podcast network. I am Philip Toledano, inventor of the fish finger, the button-down collared shirt. I'm making this up. And I can't think of a third one. So let's get into our next guest, Carlo Borromeo, a genius car designer, Italian obviously, with a fantastic moustache, FYI. Creator of the Lancia Futurista, which is the Restomod Lancia Delta Integrale. Also designer of the Restomod 928 that's been doing the rounds on Instagram. So let's get into it. Carlo Borromeo. That's how I like to.
Signor Entusiasta.
I guess this is the official start of the podcast. So
it worked for me.
First of all, man, as always, I want to start off with some sort of fawning, toady, obsequious, knee groveling. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm honored and blessed.
Especially blessed.
That's right. So, well, first of all, I guess we should start off before the festivities begin. We should start off by: do you want to explain who are you and what do you do? Or do you want me to do it? I think you probably do a better job.
Yeah, I can do it. You have a very short memory, so I wouldn't want you to mess it up.
I could get confused. I could confuse you with someone else. Halfway through the podcast.
Oh, it's Carlo. Wow.
Oh, shit. So sorry, man. So sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, so hi. My name is Carlo Borromeo. I come from Italy. No, I'm a creative director. Actually, I started my career as a designer, but I think the creative director moniker fits me best now.
Did you not start at Ital Design? Did I read that somewhere?
Actually, I started in Seat in 2002. Okay. Very young. I was 19 at the time.
And you were designing cars for Seat, is that right?
I was wasting their time, honestly. At 19, I had no designing anything. But no, I ran away from home because my parents really wanted me to study economics, but it wasn't the thing for me. And so I went to live in Barcelona, as one does. And there I had an old family friend, Walter de Silva, who was head of design at Seat at the time. And
that's an amazing old family friend to have. It's most people's old family friends, they're like middle management at an insurance company. But your old family friend is head of design at Seat.
Yeah, there is actually a funny story, but I can't say right now about that. But so Walter was a good friend of mine, like an uncle. And so I called him up and I'm like, I really, really, really enjoy designing cars and working around cars. Any chance you have an open internship, I can, come in for the summer. And he was like, yeah, sure, come here and we'll see about it. And they liked me, I liked them. So I ended up staying for 9 months and decided that was going to be my future. Then I moved to the States and I went to study. I wanted to go to Art Center Pasadena, but it was the early days of the internet for me. So I messed up on Google and I ended up applying for the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
Wait a minute, you applied to the wrong place?
I did.
This is amazing.
Realized after I got accepted. So that,
you went to the first day of school and they were given a chef's hat and a set of kitchen knives. And you're like, oh, hang on a minute. Is this
kind of. So I had a very lighthearted approach to my career back then. I didn't know any better, but the school turned out fine. I really enjoyed my years in San Francisco. I was gonna start working in the US directly. Then the financial crisis happened, and nobody seemed to be interested in renewing my work visa anymore.
No one saw the genius that is Carlo Borromeo.
Back to your country. And fortunately enough, I got picked up by Ital Design. So that's when Ital Design started, was actually after I graduated. And of course, that was the best school one could ask for. Because,
did you see that? Was the Commendatore still drifting around at Ital Design at that time?
No, I actually had never seen the Commendatore in real life because by then it was like 2008, 9.
Right. We should explain. Is Giugiaro Ital Design?
Yes.
Yes.
So he's a company founded in the 70s by Giorgetto Giugiaro. the Mac Daddy of Italian design. My favorite, I have to say, he's my favorite designer just because of the kind of cars he used to design. He's very strong in like the mid segment, hatchbacks, you know, the sort of stuff that young timers really excel at,
right?
I feel, compared to the cars from the 60s, which was more like Grand Tourers and, you know, sports cars. So he did a lot actually as a designer to really innovate what cars were. You know, he kind of invented the monovolume, how you say it in English, it's like the one volume car, you know, like
singular volume. I don't know how you say it. I just made that up.
I mean, I think we understand what I mean. And also the raised seat, like the fact that you didn't have to sit very low towards the ground was something he came up with. You know, he imagined that people don't want to lay on the ground when they're driving to which was, you know, it sounds kind of reasonable.
You know what's interesting about you know what's interesting about inventions like that is that they are so commonplace now. People lose all context of how radical an idea that was 30 years ago or 40 years ago.
Absolutely. And Giugiaro was a champion of that. You know, he was one of the few designers that would go past the style and manage to really look at the function of the car. So if
did you say pasta style, like fusilli?
No, past, like after, you know.
His real trademark was pasta style. Like he did rotini, fusilli, linguini. I mean, he did all these different. It was amazing how innovative they were using those materials in cars.
Are you mocking my culture right now?
No. Oh my God. You know what? I just realized as I was saying that my daughter would totally say, "You're canceled, Dad."
We're on thin ice nowadays. So, if you take the Panda, for example, right? They wanted to do the least expensive car possible. And so the man started thinking, okay, let's stamp metal. Let's do a flat front windshield. Genius. Let's do, instead of having a complicated glove box compartment, let's just make a cloth pocket where you just dump your stuff.
Wait, let me ask you this. What was genius about a flat front windscreen? Why was that genius?
Much cheaper to produce. You would just buy.
So he was okay. So he's thinking. You're talking about. Well, also the packaging of that car was pretty extraordinary, right? The way in which he used internal space.
It was also thought to sleep inside. You know, it was a time when people had less money, less everything. So, you know, they took into account that somebody might need to sleep inside a Panda, so you could remove the seats and fold them flat. And I mean, it was really a work of genius, in my opinion. Probably the best Italian car ever.
That is a strong statement, man. You're gonna have internet trolls outside your house with spears in a minute.
I'll be waiting for them in my Panda.
I was actually, it's interesting that because I've loved the Panda for a long time, but it's way before other people appreciated it, obviously. It has become this kind of iconic car. I feel like outside of Italy, over the last like couple of years. Do you think that's true or not?
Absolutely. It's also a mini Delta. I mean, Giugiaro liked to design the cars a certain way, and you can he designed the Delta also. So you can tell there's the same pencil behind both. So I think it has that little bit of like being cute, but also being strong in a way that it's a good recipe for a mythical car to come about.
And, cute and strong.
Yeah, cute and strong. And it's unstoppable. I drove one from Milan to Mongolia, actually.
As one does.
As one does. And
I mean, who hasn't done that road trip?
You know, I was thinking about it the other day. It wouldn't be possible nowadays to do the same trip. Yeah,
that's right. Well, hang on. Before we disappear down the rabbit hole, you should tell people, maybe we should give them a little bit of an outline about some of because you've designed some pretty impressive things yourself. If I have to give you a compliment, much to my chagrin.
Just to finish my story, my career. So I worked for Ital Design, and then at some point, together with my friend Fabio De Silva and a couple of other friends, Marco Biancullo and Filippo Sgalbazzi, we decided to start our own studio. and we were very young, very inexperienced. I was 28 at the time, so quite early. But Italy is a small country. We played our cards pretty well, and we ended up having the luck of working to create the tailor-made department in Ferrari right away, together with Lapo Elkan.
That's basically, if you have enough money, you can go to Ferrari and they can create a bespoke. Is it how far could they go in terms of bespoke, like body and interior, or just sort of fixed items they could choose?
So there is a key difference before and after tailor-made. Before tailor-made, you could always choose within a list of options. With tailor-made, it was the first time that you could ask for something specific. I wanted the color of my tie. Okay, we'll find a way to do it. So it's a small change, but it's significant because it entails a massive change in the processes, in the internal processes, because of course any fabric, any color needs to be validated, and that brings some complexity. So it was a massive effort on part of Ferrari to make this happen, and now a big percentage of their cars it's tailor-made or heavily modified. We're always talking about aesthetics, right? So color, materials, and finishes. Never about power and performance. That in Ferrari is the same for everyone.
But this is all interior, exterior, cosmetic stuff. It wasn't. You couldn't say I'd like to have a different front end or anything like that.
That you could always do.
Oh, really?
You could do it even before.
Right.
You can make one-offs with Ferrari, so car designed just for you.
Right.
There's a few coming out every year. Most of them, they don't get publicized that much. But yeah, it's always been in the cards. That I think the first famous one was James Glickenhaus.
Well, the P45, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a sort of a? Didn't Ferrari then kind of say we're not going to do that again? Sign off on a car that's that radical or something? Wasn't there some sort of? I can see the Borromeo. You cannot. What's that?
They kept doing it. I mean, there's more coming out every year. I guess they just communicated less, probably, but it's a thing, definitely.
Right.
With Glickenhaus, then it turned a bit weird because he started modifying the car. So that's when things went a little bit off rail. It's when he started changing the car because he wanted to try different stuff, and they said, no, you can't do that. And and that was a bit of a can of worms to open.
Sure.
But usually people, they get their custom design Ferrari and they keep it as is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, why would you change it?
Yeah, I mean, if you go there and you trust the vision of Flavio Manzoni and his team, and they're some of the best designers in the world. So
okay, so Ferrari tailor-made for a few years,
and then from there, that allowed the studio to grow in a very natural way. And then we found about Singer, and that opened, Singer Porsches, and that opened our eyes to the world of restomodding, which is something that felt very good for us, because I feel it's in our culture to mix the past and the present. I think that's one of the skills that we have in my studio.
Well, you worked with Eugenio on you designed the Lancia Futurista. Which I think in some ways, even though the Singer Restomod, I guess it was. I personally think what you guys did was a little bit more radical than that, because there's been a long history of Porsche Restomod backdating, all the rest of it. What Singer did was they just elevated it to this extraordinary level, right? But no one had considered, like, a sort of, in quotes, the normal car. There was no kind of culture of taking other cars and doing that kind of treatment to them. Do you think that's true or not to say?
Yes, I mean, there are some examples in England. The British have always been very liberal in their approach to modifying cars. So the Eagle E-types.
That's true.
Alphaholics, Alphas, but there were definitely more conservatives in the way they treated the source material compared.
Well, it was more reverential, I think. I mean, I think what you and Eugenio did was you said, okay, let's take the Lancia Delta Integrale, let's make it 2-door instead of 4-door, which is kind of sacrilegious to a lot of people. So it changed the proportions a little bit. But then, I mean, you did all sorts. I mean, the interior is extraordinary.
Changed a lot. And I think that stemmed from our fear of not doing enough. You know, we came after Singer, and without Singer, there wouldn't be Automobili Amos. I mean, they showed the way, but that's the advantage of coming second to a concept. You know, you feel like you have to improve on, I don't want to say improve, but do your own version of what,
you know, that without the Lancia Futurista, there would be no Lancia Bastarda.
I know, that's how we connected at the beginning, actually.
But it's so true, man, because when I saw the Futurista, I remember I got in touch with Eugene. I was like, hey, how much is this? And he told me, I thought, okay. And I sort of deflated. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I can make something that's, you know, maybe 23% as good for a little bit, for a lot less money. And that was really my inspiration, man. Like I took a car that had been already sort of adjusted, shall we say, in Japan. And then I didn't go anywhere nearly as far as you guys did, not even like 20% as far as you guys did, but it was really inspiring to see your car. I think because for me, the Futurista opened up the idea of, I think that one of the things, I've always grown up collecting classic cars, and one of the things that happens when you collect classic cars is this idea, thank you, this idea of originality. Like it's untouchable in some ways. There are things that are untouchable about cars. You don't fuck with the color. You don't sort of change, you don't change how many doors it has. There's some stuff you don't change. Like, you can rebuild the engine, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't really change the visual look of things. And when you guys did that with the Futurista, I thought, wow, this is amazing to like even the simple thing, like considering an old car in a contemporary color that was never offered in, suddenly changes it.
Absolutely.
And that was,
this is something that started with our generation because it works very well on young timers.
Yeah.
Because young timers are cars that they were probably shit when they were built, like the Delta. Love the Delta. I have one.
Get out, Borromeo.
It's a car that has some very deep production issues underneath the skin.
Right.
So the cars have more personality than quality. And so they're prime targets for a Restomod.
Well, okay, let me ask you this though, man. Is it not all their faults that give it the personality? Or is that a bullshit, like old fogey reasoning?
No, it is definitely, but the faults, you know the personality of the car. Now, I feel when a Restomod it's really successful, it gives you back the memory you have of the car.
Right.
So the Delta, the first time I saw it, I was like 8, and my sister's boyfriend had it, and like it looked like a transformer.
Sure. Especially when you're 8, you're physically small, and it's kind of like, it's almost like Goliath. It's Gulliverian in size. Like all my memories of cars when I was a kid, the cars always seem so much more overwhelming and bigger than they are now.
So I think a Restomod is successful when you manage to give back that idea on an adult.
Right.
To take it back to the memory of the car that he had, not what the actual car was like.
Right.
Because people want a Delta, but you want a Delta, but I'm sure you don't drive the Delta all that often because you're missing something compared to a contemporary car, right?
No, I take my kid, I cycle through the car. So I go through, like, for a month, I'll have the Delta in the garage. I'll take the kid to school in it. Which is
that's because you're a watch collector. You're used to cycling to have a rotation.
Well, actually, okay. So you know what? Okay, I will. Okay, so going back to what you said about the idea of a memory of the Restomod kind of giving you that memory of the thing you saw when you were a kid. I would take umbrage, not with the thing you did, but with a Restomod. I can't. We briefly discussed this a while ago, but the 037. So for me, the problem with that car, I'm sure in all ways it's a better car, like mechanically and all the rest of it, and quicker and all the rest of it. But for me, I think that the Restomod, that idea stops at the idea of homologation cars, because for me, homologation cars and in particular the 037, those were things that were intrinsically connected to Group B. Like they were made for homologation. They were made so that they could then make cars to race. And when you make like the Restomod 037 is kind of like this echo of a memory of an idea of a I don't know what, like it's so distant for me. It kind of, I don't think that functions as a Restomod. I'm interested to know what you think.
So I mean, I don't want, it feels kind of weird to talk shit about, it's not really a competitor, but, you know, somebody who's doing something similar but different from us. I agree with you in the sense that for me, what's really interesting about Restomod is working on production cars. So cars that have large numbers outside and being produced, and to take that and do what we said before. So take the soul, the identity of the car as we perceive it, as we remember it, and giving it a new lease on life. So that's what I'm interested in. It's a cultural exercise. I'm not
because you're synthesizing nostalgia and memory.
Absolutely. That's the key points of what we're doing. And I think it's also the key points of what is getting to our customers in the end, because, you know, most of them, they don't really care about how the car drives. I mean, it needs to drive very well, but the point is not, you know, doing the best time on a lap or anything like that.
Right.
It's just getting that analog. We call it the swan song of the analog car. So for us, it's like, how can we peak it? You know, how we
but
can
but let me ask you this, man. I feel like every fucking day there's some like thing on Instagram, like, oh, we're resto-modding this, I feel like there's just, I think you open this Pandora's box and it's a resto-mod tsunami. And 90% of these things are just vaporware. They're not going to be real cars. They're just someone sort of done up an old car they've tweaked it in, you know, Photoshop or whatever it is. And I'm not saying they don't look amazing, but I'm having slight resto-mod fatigue. What do you think about that?
So it's really easy for us. So we just came out with a new Restomod, as you know.
We have to discuss.
But so I mean, it would be easy for me to, you know, like do a bit of gatekeeping and be like, oh, you know, that's shit, you don't understand and whatnot. In reality, to me, all these things are showing the emotional side of cars, that people still care on a very deep level about these cultural icons. And so I'm all for it.
See, now you've just shown me up as like a cranky old geezer.
Did I make you look like an asshole?
You made me look like an asshole. I'm like, hey, turn that music down, kids.
No, but you know what I mean.
Because you make a very good point. You make a good point. It's an expression of love, is what it is. You're right.
Most of them, and I haven't met anybody that it's doing it for money.
Right.
Like, because there aren't, you know, even though the cars are very expensive, it's really expensive to make limited edition cars where you only make 20, 30 cars. It's
sure. Okay, well, you touched on it. So let's talk about, you just came out with a 928 Restomod. I have some thoughts, as I'm sure you're aware. So do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. I would say it's a coming of age Restomod for me. So it's a more mature kind of operation. With the Delta, we had unwavering energy of youth at our side. You know, like it was the first time it was very rock and roll. With the Delta, we had more. With the Porsche, we had more of a method. But it's also a car that we were much less familiar with. So when, you know, I grew up, and I feel very dumb in saying this, but I grew up as a staunch defender of Italian cars versus German cars, you know.
Well, that's not dumb, man. I mean, that's just, you know, what happens when you grow up somewhere.
Yeah, I guess, but in the end, one should...
I was a staunch defender of British Leyland cars from the 70s, man.
Yeah, exactly. No, so basically, I never really got into Porsches. And Eugenio actually was the one that was like, no, dude, you know, seriously, look into Porsches, don't be stupid. And then Thierry Nardone, the owner of the 928, he contacted us. And, you know, it was just an Instagram thing. We were commenting on things and stuff. And he was like, "Oh, would you like to do a Porsche Restomod?" And my first reaction was literally, I wrote, "Fuck no, I'm not doing a 911," because Finger did it. And what can I add to the discussion? And he was like, "No, no, 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 no. Look, I'm in love with transaxle Porsches. I think we should do a 928 or maybe a 924." And something clicked, because it's such a special, flawed, amazing car where the personality beats I mean, it's a complex car with a lot of character, misunderstood by many. And so I thought, yeah, there we have something that we can say about that. It's not your typical 911, right? Where you have people that dedicated their entire lives, like your friend Magnus and whatnot, to
Sure.
those. And I would have never felt right for me to come and like kind of intrude in that little clique, in that huge clique, actually, because it's but the 928, no, 928 is a special car, and I feel like we could have something to say. And it connects to all the 80s product design that was coming out of Italy as well. I think there's a lot of like Italian, German culture in that project. And so yeah, we took it as something really cool that we could
I mean,
do.
look, I will be the first to tell you. I was thinking about this the other day about the car, because I totally had like such an old geezer, leaning out the window shouting at the kids moment when I saw it. Because for me, there's two things that make up the 928, because I've always loved that car.
Mm-hmm.
Is that incredible egg shape, which was unlike any shape I remember seeing it when it came out as a kid in England, and there was no shape like it. This kind of mobile egg. And then two was the Pasha, the crazy, that was so un-Porsche like. It was kind of like, it was like the Germans just taking mushrooms and taking off their clothes and running around the fields going, woo! What I mean? That, like, in my mind,
it was Germany in the late 80s, after all.
Well, late 70s.
Yeah, no, I mean the mood of Germany, right. After Berlin.
And so when you came out with your car, it's I was thinking about this. I was looking at, the more I look at it, the more it's a really beautiful car. It's just not the thing I had in mind, because I had at one point thought about doing a Restomod 928, and I would have gone fully egg and what you did was you evolved the design in a different kind of way than I expected. So I had this sort of need. This is basically some sort of miserable confession.
Fulfillment thing that you got going on, right?
Yeah, it's so I had, it was just not what I had. You had gone in a direction I had not expected, and because of that, I had this reaction of like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't really think I like it. But the more I look at it, it's really beautifully done, and the lines are amazing. It's interesting because it has, to me, quite a bit of. I used to have a 924 Carrera GTS Club Sport, which was sort of the precursor to the 944.
It was a big inspiration for the project, actually.
Well, exactly. And you can see, it's interesting because I remember talking to your chap Nardone. He had initially gotten in touch with me about that car, and he was saying he wanted to do a 924 Carrera GTS Restomod. And I think that it seems to me that's what bled into the 928. So it's this interesting fusion, because it's got kind of the rear end of the 944, those kind of flared haunches, and then the front end of the 928. So it's this peculiar beast, but it really works.
I think it does, and it actually does much better in real life than it does in photos. I'm not bullshitting you, I swear.
So you know what? That's what I told you about the De Tommaso Guarra, and you just fucking laugh. You're like, yeah, sure, pal.
That car is a piece of shit, and you know it.
Oh my God! How dare you! It is. You know what? You have to see that car in person, man. Also, I'm going to.
We'll put the two cars one next to another, and we'll tell each other that we were wrong.
That's right. That's right. We'll have a video confessional.
No, but so I take your 2 points. The egginess, I agree, but if you look at it in real life, it's still eggy. It's still like you still have that feeling of egginess, at least the way I see it. And on the Pasha, actually, it's funny that you mentioned it. We were meant to have a Pasha interior.
Oh, interesting.
But we made it out of woven leather. So it was.
Oh, that's amazing.
Stripes of leather. and it didn't turn out right, like on a practical level.
Right.
So we're still developing it. It's gonna be an option on the car, but it just wasn't ready for prime time.
Right.
So we decided to go with something a little.
Man, that's amazing. The idea, because I was thinking the thing about Pasha is how do you take that idea and evolve it to, and refract it through the prism of the 21st century. And so having it in woven leather, God, that I feel like that would be extraordinary.
I can send you pictures of the sample. Actually, we have it.
I'd love to see, man. That's such a cool idea. Wow, that's really brilliant. Because I was wondering, how do you take that interior, and then how do you evolve it so it's but it's different, a different it. That's cool.
And also, it was a big issue for us because when you're doing like 20 cars, you can't really print with enough quality that it will, it won't bleed out on your clothes if it's hot and stuff like that. So it was also born out of necessity rather than woven leather. It's very expensive to make, but it's great to make a short run of it, right?
Sure.
So to make 20 or so.
That's amazing, man. I love that. Okay, so we both have two cars we think are shit. We're gonna see them in person and then we should have a voting. We'd have a live Instagram vote on which car is less shit.
And we hug it out.
That's right. We have a hug it out. Maybe we go on like a road trip together. I drive the 928, you drive the Guara. At the end, we're like, yeah, I was totally wrong, bro.
but I was actually extremely surprised by how well it was received, the 928.
People loved it.
I'm honest with you, like I was really afraid because I don't know, like Deltas, I know we were gonna piss off people, but we enjoyed that also. I mean, it was part of the deal. So we knew what we were getting ourselves into. With the 928, it was a bit more mysterious. It's a culture where at least I'm less familiar with. So to see the support that the project got and the commercial success it's having now.
So how many are you making?
There is no limit on production.
Okay.
We learned that mistake also from the Futurista, which
I know
limited, and it was one of those childhood mistakes we're not going to repeat.
So was there, for the Delta, was there massive demand for that?
Yes, there still is.
Right.
A lot of people.
It's interesting. It's a tricky thing because I remember talking to Eugenio about it. I mean, he had promised to make 30 cars or something? 20. So is there a way to do that ethically? Like, because on the one hand, the people are buying it because it's limited. So they want to be assured that there's, I mean, I feel like a lot of people do that they'll say, oh, we're going to make X amount. And then there's such demand. They go, actually, no, we're going to make 3 times X amount. And then
Pagani.
Yeah, exactly. Pagani, for instance. Exactly.
And they're like, we'll only make 10 of these plus 5.
Yeah. Plus 5 artists, models or whatever it's called. Yeah.
The Zonda Ultima, this time is for real, I swear. No, I mean, for us, it was Eugenio starts his career as a car collector. And the reason why we did the Delta was also because he was very disappointed in a lot of these market practices, and he wanted to change that. So it was
by market practices. Explain what you mean by market practices.
Like, having fake limited editions that don't mean much, or artificial.
Talking about specifically the Delta.
No, I'm talking in general.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Big OEMs, how they sell you cars, and they say, oh, this is a limited edition, and then 2 months later they make another slightly different limited edition.
Right. It's just a different headrest, different colored headrest.
Exactly. So we didn't want to go that way, and a lot of the clients became also friends, or they were friends before. So it didn't feel right. The biggest value that Automobili Amos has is the relationship with its clients. So in the end, 20 was and 20 it is. We're doing a very different version now, which is called Safarista.
Of the Lancia?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is a Mr. Enthusiast scoop.
No, we published already.
Bastardo.
So, but that's a completely different car in the sense that it's gonna be rally.
It's a station wagon.
No, it's rally spec though. You have like completely redone mechanics. It's non-homologated. Very high travel suspension. We redid a lot of the body work as well. So it's actually a different car altogether in the spirit, especially like the mood of the car. And it's called Safarista.
Okay.
So the Futurista, it's more like urban and, made for tarmac.
Inspired by the Safari Porsche situation that's happening.
Actually,
we had that idea before they did.
We published the render, thank God, like months before Singer came out with the Yeti.
Right.
Because we were afraid when Singer came out, people were going to tell us.
Well, okay, but I will say that the Safari Porsche has been a thing for like 5 years now.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about specifically about the Yeti.
Right.
The Singer Porsche. No, of course. Safari cars, that style exists thanks to Porsche, the ones that participated to the Dakar and all that.
Whatever happened to you were going to do, I don't know if you could talk about this. You were going to do.
I can talk about
are you looking at your lawyer off camera?
I have a gun here.
I know that at one point you were discussing doing the Shamal Restomod. Is that a thing you can discuss or we have to, or no, Toledano?
No, Toledano. No, unfortunately, I can't comment on that.
I love it when you say that, man. It's so like posh and like corporate. I cannot comment at this time. Okay. Well, I was very excited about that.
Me too.
Yeah.
And, I hope I'll have good news eventually, but for now it's Restomod purgatory. Let's say.
Right. Well, yeah. So also aren't you designing? Can you talk about the other thing you're designing with Eugenio? That sort of street car that's almost like the what?
The Tuono.
Yeah. It's sort of Multipla-esque.
Yeah. So that came, Eugenio likes to get very philosophical and I get dragged into it as well.
Right.
So at some point we went into this loop of saying, I'm 40, he's 37. So we are, let's say in the middle of our life. And
where's that put me? At the end, I'm at the tail end.
A little bit further ahead down the road. And we felt bad at some point that our claim to fame, our most successful product was a car from 30 some years ago. And to me, that's, now that I have kids, to tell them, my son was asking me, so what's your favorite car? And it felt shitty to tell him it's a car from 30 years ago because it's kind of like admitting that we're not doing anything cool these days.
Okay.
Which is not a good thought to have, especially in a country like Italy where we have such a heavy past.
Right.
Such a heavy heritage. It's really easy to get lost in the thought that the best has already happened.
Right. And I know it's all like Dolce Vita and Gianni Agnelli. Endlessly.
Fuck. So done. If I see another Maron's photo, I'm gonna punch somebody in the face. And so we said at some point it's our duty to make something today for today with enthusiasm, with Mr. Enthusiast. With something that brings joy about the world we live in and not like always nostalgia about the world that our parents used to live in. Even though it's easier to work on nostalgia. And so he very gracefully decided to finance the concept car with Automobili Amos. And it's a full electric car. It's kind of like an SUV style car. We haven't come out with the renders yet. We're not quite ready. But that's a very complex project that it's full electric. Did I say that? Yeah. It's a very complex project that needs amazingly huge investments. But what I really like, and I wish I could show it to you and it would make more sense, is that we managed to make a huge SUV look like a hatchback and feel like a hatchback. So it's a very interesting car. It's
You know, the thing about nostalgia, it's kind of like movie executives and superhero movies. Yeah. Like when you have like the reason they're so prolific with the super and there's so many of them is that there's a built-in base of people who love that stuff, and that's the same with nostalgia. Like there's a base of people who love that stuff, who have memories of it, even if they never owned it or drove one, or you know, they just saw it in a magazine as a kid, or they even if they drove it on like Gran Turismo.
Absolutely. Well, Roof, I'm fairly certain that half of the reason why Roof is so popular these days is because they were in Gran Turismo 3 and 4. It was the only way you could drive a Porsche was driving a Roof, because at the time Porsche didn't give them the rights. But 100% I agree with you. It's like Star Wars, even more than superhero movies, I feel. Yeah. Star Wars is a good example of that. You know, you already know you have a public. You already know a father would love to see it with the son because they can connect on that.
I need to get the Guara into Gran Turismo.
You should.
I love how every time I just say that word, your face just drops. you just look sad and depressed.
It's actually, I do it on purpose. You know, I don't really feel that negatively about it. I just love.
You're just getting my goat, man. You're just getting my goat.
So yeah, I agree, and I feel I would love to make more contemporary stuff. The issue also is that we're an independent studio, and most car companies, they brought all the design team inside nowadays. So it's very rare that they go asking external studios to design a car from scratch.
Does the whole sort of architecture of electric cars not make things so much easier to design from an aesthetic standpoint? Because there's a general kind of flat skateboard technology that seems to be adopted by most people, you know, motors on the wheels, and doesn't that make stuff so much simpler from a design standpoint?
It doesn't. Like in a way it does, because you have simply less components to deal with. It doesn't in the sense that we're so used to the previous world that to kind of reset your mind and see the new possibilities, it takes a lot of effort, because we have a lot of preconceptions built in, you know, like the front hood has to be long for a GT, or, you know, the packaging should be like this and that. There's a lot of stuff that we take for granted. And if you change it, the car changes and people don't recognize it as such and such anymore. So it's very dangerous also for marketing purposes. It's a leap in the dark. But
you see, this is the thing, and maybe I'm an anomaly here. But you know, that funnily enough, one of the things that really bugs me about what's that?
I said you are definitely an anomaly.
Yeah, maybe not in a good sense either. But one of the things that always bugs me about electric cars, and I totally understand. To your point, man, I completely understand that one of the things that this sort of faux grille that you always see on electric cars, or the shape, the idea of a grille. And I totally understand that the thinking is, and maybe this is backed up by consumer testing and marketing and market research, but that consumers need to, as you say, they need to have a familiar shape of a car that includes some sort of grille so they recognize it as a car. But I also wonder, like, think about the reaction to, and I can't remember if this is an accurate memory or not, but the Tesla Cybertruck, which I thought was amazing. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I can't remember if you liked that or not, but there was incredible reaction to that. And so to me, that says surely maybe car companies are being too cautious. And what if they came out with these like amazing spacey designs? Maybe they're just, you know, they're being too nervous about it.
I think the Cybertruck really captured what a concept car should do, which is, you know, relate to some cultural common ground. It's an 80s car, you know, it connects to the world of sci-fi movies that we also, so we go back to the nostalgia element, but it projects it into the future. So I think concept cars, they should make you dream about a future that probably will never be. But, you know,
why can't it be a real car?
Because there is no way they can actually make it legal, that car. I mean, they were very smart in how they told the narrative. But if you like, there is a law, which I really like as a law, that if you hit somebody with a car, he's supposed to go over the car and not under.
That's
the car.
right. That's right.
Reasonable law. And the Cybertruck.
This is bullshit, man. This is bullshit. Big government telling us what to do. If I want to go under the car, I should be allowed to go under the car, man. It's my choice.
Exactly. So I think, it's a concept car. The production version is going to be much different. Maybe it will still look cool. But in the end, what it managed is capture people's imagination. And then, of course, you have people that love it, people that hate it. But it did what it's supposed to do, which is make a lot of noise.
Well, you know what? Actually, that brings me to an interesting point, Matt. I think you raised an interesting point, which is that I was talking to Tom Gale, the head of Chrysler Design, on a couple of podcasts ago, and he oversaw this kind of golden period in the 90s of extraordinary concept cars. They made like 50 concept cars in the space of 10 or 15 years, and I feel like we don't see crazy concept cars anymore. It's always like a near production version of a car.
Or it's something that nobody gives a shit about. Which is even worse. Like
what?
Look at the last concept car from Audi, the one without the steering wheel. It's like they spent bajillions designing it, building the concept. It looks real. It doesn't, at least maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. It doesn't relate to anything. Is this a future? Possibly, yes, I guess, but there is no personality. There is no real emotion behind it. Do you see yourself driving that in the future? Well, maybe it's gonna be featured in a shitty science fiction movie with Will Smith, maybe, yeah.
If he gets back to Hollywood.
But it's not.
You know what? In your face. Sorry, go on, man. I interrupted.
No. So the Cybertruck was like a punch in your face. It was impossible, undeniably present. When it came out, you had to notice it. It was taking your attention. So that I think it's what concept cars should do. It's
do you remember that Honda City car that they came out with? That actually I think is a really beautiful piece of design. Like, it's a small little thing with this. It's got a really lovely front end.
The electric one.
Yeah,
they built it.
But the story I heard was that they made a production car, and then they said, oh, we've got to make a concept version for the show to make it look snazzy or something. Is that right? Or did I hallucinate the whole thing?
Story, but it's very concepty, and I like it. I think it's a great car. It suffers from a few issues of redundancy inside with the system, but it's a great little car. What I want to bring your attention to, which I think it's very on point, is the new Hyundai concept car.
Ah, man, I'm obsessed with Hyundai. Actually, I think they're just killing it. And I also I think I'm trying to. I think the next car I'm going to get, I was talking about this yesterday with the missus, is an Ioniq 5, because I just love how that looks.
It's a good car, and it has its own personality. The N76, it's the most amazing concept car to come out. And why? Because you can imagine yourself on one, it really brings out an emotion, right? It connects to the past. It's inspired by a car that was designed by Giugiaro, coincidentally. And you can tell, I mean, if you know his style, you can definitely tell. But it's also contemporary, it's futuristic, it's everything all at once. It relates to the world we live in now.
That car is brilliant, and the thing about that car is it feels like it's so tantalizingly close to being real. Like, when I saw that car, I was like, oh my god, I would buy that car in a second if it came out like that.
Same, and that one can be made. It's not like the Cybertruck. That one is fairly realistic. I mean, you know
what car was the biggest disappointment of all time? Of course, now I can't remember. What's that?
The Quaria?
No. It was it the Toyota
FJ Cruiser?
No. I actually thought that was pretty cool, oddly enough. And I just read that one sold for like 100 grand recently at auction. So I think they're on their way up. No, it was a sports car. Was it the Supra or something? The one they did?
The last Supra. It's a BMW Z4 with fake air vents.
Yeah, exactly. Like the concept was actually kind of amazing. And then when they came out with a production model, it was so interesting to see how it looked like the concept, but somehow they changed proportions to make it look totally shit.
Because they had to base it on the Z4. It's a BMW with a couple of body panels changed. And you can tell. And you can definitely tell. I never was a big fan of that car. And it connects to what you were saying before. It's not only electric cars that have all this fake stuff on them. It's also combustion engine cars that do. All of them. If you look, 90% of the air vents are closed behind. 90% of the exhaust pipes are fake, and you have the real exhaust inside. Right. Which is something we hadn't seen since the 50s, maybe, you know, when you had the cars with the fins and all the fake futuristic stuff.
Yeah, but the difference with the 50s stuff was those were styling cues. They weren't supposed to imitate functional things, right?
Yeah. True. Here they have also the pretense of having a function, which is silly. Right. I don't know. And then you hear the same designer talk and they're like, form follows function. Bullshit. That's not.
Right. It's so true.
Not nowadays. Most of it's pure style.
Right. So you know what's ironic is it's pure style, but it's not stylish.
Yeah, it's styling, I guess.
Right. So what are you designing? Are you designing any new cars now that you can discuss, or you cannot comment at this time?
We might or might not be working on a new Restomod.
Okay.
More extreme of the previous ones. So with a.
Well, wait, hang on a minute, man. You can't just dangle that out there. Can you Borromeo? What?
I don't know if I can. I'm thinking if I get in trouble for saying it. It has the name of a bull.
Okay. All right. Well, look, that sounds very exciting.
Name of a bull.
Okay.
But we're really enjoying the process. I think it comes well. After the 928, it was a beautiful, whatever you think about it, we're convinced that we got something.
I love that car. Okay, let me ask you this, man. What is your most what is your most favorite part of the whole process? For instance, I can tell you as an artist, the purest part for me is the dawning of when an idea crystallizes in my mind. It's a physical sensation of like excitement and joy. So what's the most exciting? Is it like seeing the finished product? Is it coming up with the idea? What's the most exciting part of that?
Definitely the beginning, the very beginning. The very beginning, you get that wave of, as you say, that wave of enthusiasm and, all these ideas that they mix together and all this world of possibilities that once you realize you're onto something, right? So that's the part I prefer because it really lets me like fly with my head and really get into it. Then it becomes a struggle at times, and usually I get the pleasure of it back when it's out.
So when you did the Futurista, did you think it would have the reception it had, and same for the 928, or you had no clue?
No, the Futurista, we expected a bloodbath. Like we were really scared. We were really scared about it. It was we were also much younger. And we never. Well,
I understand that because you were fucking with with something that had like maniacal followers. It was. Delta people are cult people.
Man, imagine this. I worked for Giugiaro. Like I know both Giugiaro, father and son. Like they're good friends of mine. And Fabrizio was not happy. So
really?
Giorgetto was fine with it. Fabrizio less so. And
this is so interesting. So let me ask you this, man. Did you Did you show the stuff to those guys as you were doing it?
No, no, because I didn't want to have, I didn't want to get confused. I wanted to follow our inspiration and our thinking. But what happened is that when we showed the car for the first time, it was at Grand Basel in Basel in Switzerland, and they were both there. So the night before, they came to see the car. And,
oh my God! Holy shit! This is amazing. This is an amazing story, man. Yeah. I mean, this is like a trouser-changing situation.
Yeah, code brown all over. But
so what happened?
No, they were very gracious about it, especially Giorgetto. He, like the guy has been named designer of the century. Like he floats. He doesn't walk anymore. So he kind of
right. I guess when you're designer of the century, you can be gracious.
It's like he was very gracious about it, and that gave us some confidence. And then the next day, the project came out, and out of a very complex alchemy of factors, it got received super well, and of course, it's a big.
Man, I mean, it took over that car. I mean, I have to say, man, you've had pretty good success. The Futurista and the 928 took over the internet when they came out.
Yeah, I want to say we have a master plan for it. There's definitely a good share of luck involved in that, in the virality of these things.
Well, I don't know, man. I think you've been pretty smart in that you've taken objects that are well embedded within popular culture, that are well loved, and you've done good things to them.
I guess we are also very lucky with the 928 that we had the support of Type 7. Right. They were the first to launch the news because we didn't have a big, a big stage like Grand Basel was. And Type 7 decided to run the news of the car, which
did you give them an exclusive or something?
Well, we tried to. So we sent them the press back, and we told everybody else, at least 6 hours, don't publish anything. And then as soon as Type 7 published, everybody else started publishing, and so the journalists were calling me and come on, don't be an asshole, everybody's republishing Type 7 photos, and so after a couple hours we were yeah, go ahead, publish it all. And it really happened in a very massive way. And then we got lucky that we were invited by Yorgo to Goodwood.
Who?
That was Yorgo. He's a French Greek designer. Also, okay. Who would love it?
Yorgo.
Yorgo, it's amazing, and he was curating the space for Mr. Porter in Goodwood.
Oh, that's right.
And we had never met each other, and in late May, he calls me and it's can you send us a Futurista? And I told him, look, there is already a Futurista going to be there in another stand, so I cannot make the competition to that one. He's like, shit, I really wanted that car in the stand. I was like, I have something that nobody has seen yet, And I showed him.
As it turns out.
This a beautiful alignment of stars, and so they invited us, and it was great because we launched it on June 10th, and the hype grew and grew and grew, and then on the 22nd we were in Goodwood, so we had a ton of people that were coming just to see.
I hear it's actually a lot better in person, the car.
It is. Depends which
much like
person.
Much like the Guara. God, I don't know, man. I feel like you're kind of living the dream. People throw that phrase around a lot, but for anyone who's into cars, look, I am just such a as I said earlier, I'm just some cantankerous old geezer. I've never designed a car. I don't know what goes into designing a car, but I have more than enough opinions about cars I haven't even seen, and I'm always proclaiming on the internet, I don't like this, I don't like that, but you're really doing it. And I really respect and admire how you're doing it and what you're doing it with. It's exciting, man.
It
That's the
definitely.
last time that's the last time I'll ever say anything nice to you, by the way.
Well, I'll hold it dear to my heart, and this is recorded. I'll have it on Spotify, and I'll make my kids listen to it every day. See what Signor Entusiasta said about Daddy?
Yeah, some random old guy on the internet. No, it's really inspiring, man, what you're doing. And I feel like what you're doing is you're becoming a bit of a cult leader yourself. Like you've forged out this space for yourself where, because I don't know of any other person or other people who are repeating the success of doing a Restomod after Restomod.
I guess. Well, Singer is, but they also.
Yeah, but that's singular.
Yeah,
that's one thing. You're doing different cars every time.
Consider that I'm not a one-man show. Whenever I talk in plural, not because
I know.
I'm full of myself, but I have like a big team of people that are really, really badasses at what they do. And
yeah, I mean, don't forget that I'm head of headrest design for Borromeo de Silva.
No, you're head of.
Oh, that's right, the clock.
Head of dashboard clock design. No, but
we should explain. We should explain to people. What you had said to me.
It's part of the Shama.
Oh, it's part of the non-disclosure. It's under. All right, it's under the. I was so excited to be part of it. And you're like, yeah, you could do the dash clock.
It would have been glorious.
It would have been glorious.
But yeah, so I just wanted to say, actually, the best part for me is the community of people I interact with. So that's what makes it really valuable. And I think it's something that you see in the end result is that we have fun. The thing that people love the most about the Delta is the levati. So we, right. On the high beams, we wrote levati, which means get the fuck out of the way in Italian, which is convenient, like a short word. But to decide that, it was just, we were bullshitting in front of the computer with Marco, one of the head of design at the studio. And we just called Eugenio and we were like, hey, can we do this? And he was like, hell yeah, you should, And to have that streamlined process, it's
right.
amazing.
Well, also, you know what? It's interesting because this I find in making art or making anything, it's often the kind of off the cuff ideas that are a little bit harebrained that people notice the most. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
If you manage to get them through, because with car companies, you have so many layers of approval and opinions, and that all this kind of how you call it, instinctiveness.
Right. It gets committed out of the design, doesn't it?
100%. That's why I love seeing stuff like the Hyundai, because can you imagine explaining that to a CEO? So we're gonna do a 70s car, but it's hydrogen powered and it looks kind of real, but it's not. It's not something.
Well, I tell you, man, I have the same regard for car designers as I do for film directors, because both endeavors require so many people to be on board and to understand the vision and to share the vision and to have courage to get the vision through intact, that when amazing movies come out or when amazing car designs come out, it's a fucking miracle, because there are so many people who are afraid and unwilling to take that leap. So when things do come out, they're amazing. It's extraordinary to me.
It's I never thought about it that way, but you're 100% right.
Of course I'm right.
Of course you are.
Hey. Yeah, no, it is. It's a miracle, man. Like you say, the Hyundai thing, because I worked, as you know, I worked for 10 or 12 years in advertising and on the creative side. And it was like a 12-year long argument. Basically, you're always trying to go, no, but you have to understand this is how it's going to be. And you have to persuade the creative director. You have to persuade the client. You have multiple clients to persuade. You have to persuade the director. All these people have to see the thing that you're trying to talk about. And so it's kind of amazing when things emerge unscathed. And you can always see when something started well and ended up terribly.
And it got committed, yes. You can definitely see it. Once you've been in the industry for a while, you start seeing it, and it feels so painful when you do. It's like.
Wait, can you think of an example of a car that's come out? Well, I know you don't like to savage other people, but I enjoy good savaging.
I'm trying to think about something that fits without offending anybody, but most of these guys are my friends. Don't make me look like an asshole.
All right, I'm really trying to make you look like an asshole, man.
Any BMW of the past 20 years, maybe?
Yeah, I guess so, right? It is fascinating.
What are they doing in BMW? I have no idea.
I feel like the last great thing they designed was the 850.
To me, it's the E46 M3.
Yeah, okay.
That's peak car in general. I really have to hand it to them. After Chris Angle came about, I lost it. The Gina was still genius, though. You remember the what? Gina? The Gina, the car with the body made of fabric.
Oh, yeah. I love that car. Yeah. That was amazing.
Absolute genius. Genius.
That was fantastic. Yeah, that was so radical.
It was incredible. And I also love, there was a little bit of an innuendo in the name and and all that. But that's like, I remember when I was in college by the time it came out, or almost in college, and that showed me the way that like original mind-boggling car design would still be possible. There was still something left to do in that sense, where you can really like come out of the out of the left field. Is that how you say?
Yeah.
Do something like completely that catches everybody off guard.
So do you think Hyundai is the only people doing that now, inspiring young people to be car designers?
Yes, I think they're doing it better than everybody else. I think other people are trying in varying degrees, but definitely Hyundai are. And this could be broadened as Korea. I feel like Korea, it's like generating most of the pop culture we live in nowadays, and you can feel it reverberating from the US to Italy, and then they're really becoming a cultural center for the whole world to look up to. Be it fashion, be it movies, be it music, be it cars,
boy bands.
I still listen to Metallica, but I guess.
So I guess that because of all the things you've created, I mean, obviously in life, the formula is that if you're successful in creating stuff, eventually it ends up you having to work much less for work, in the sense that people start coming to you. So have you found that you're because of the 928 and the Futurista, you're having a lot more big OEMs coming to you and saying, hey, we want you to do this or that?
No, we're pretty insular. So, we're located in Italy, which already doesn't help. And we have some companies we've worked with for a long time. I have a very long-standing relationship with Ferrari, as we mentioned, with Maserati. So I'm kind of tied to those Italian brands. Now we're starting to do a little bit of stuff with Porsche, but we're still too, how did Hunter S. Thompson said, too weird to live, too rare to die.
That's excellent, man. Okay, let me ask you this then. If you could do, I feel like part of the Restomod thing is it's often kind of exciting cars.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of would love to do like a Restomod, say for instance, of like a I've reached this age where every time I try and think of a thing, it disappears. It just disappears. Well, there's two cars. There's a Subaru. Is it the
protection?
From my own genius.
It's your brain trying to protect you.
It's the Subaru. I think it's SVX. You know that one that had the really cool windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. And then there was also it was a two-door off-road car made by a Japanese manufacturer that was super crazy looking in the 90s. Shit, what was it?
Off-road, I can't think of anything right.
It was like a little SUV. Oh God, I think it might have been a Hyundai.
I'm too destabilized by your glorious presence to really think at the time.
But it would be interesting. It would be I kind of love the idea of resto-modding something that was super basic. Didn't Hyundai do a resto mod of something that was super basic from the 70s?
Yeah, they did it of, it's called the Pony or something like that.
Yeah, the Pony. That's right, the Pony.
Beautiful electric resto mod also that.
Yeah.
They're so good.
I know, it's depressing how good they are. But that's what I'm talking about. It would be so great to see a resto mod, a futurized version of a completely basic, mundane car that was produced in the millions, not a car that has like, cult following that was a performance thing or this, that, just like a family sedan of some kind, like a Ford Cortina or something.
I would like to do, the Mercedes, the one they call the Hammer, the family wagon. AMG.
Yeah, but that's cheating, man. No, Bastardo, no.
Is that family wagon? I want to
No. I'm talking about like you have to. Okay, let's just pick. You have to pick a super mundane, like something that everyone had that no one paid any attention to. That was like a vehicular wallpaper in the 80s or 90s.
Okay, it has to be Japanese then.
Okay, yeah, like a Corolla or something.
Yeah,
or an Accord.
Like yeah.
Or a CV. The Isuzu. Oh, here's the car. The Isuzu Vehicross.
You caught me off guard here, Phil. You won. I don't remember.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna Google it right now and show it to you on the screen. And Isuzu. It's so cool. It's the coolest car. Okay. Let me see.
I would also love to do a minivan.
Let me see this car.
Yeah, nice.
How cool is that car, man?
It's very late 90s. So there was this moment in the late 90s where everything started looking like a TVR Tuscan, like everything was super bubbly.
Right.
It's weird. It existed.
But that's an amazing. Yeah, but that's an amazing piece of design. Like I look at it now, and I've seen some people doing restorations of those cars, and it looks fucking incredible.
It would be an interesting one. It's really hard to do resto mods, I feel, on cars that are so rounded, just because it's just one continuous surface. So it's really hard to add onto it.
You just make it all carbon fiber, man.
Yeah. Well, find me a couple $100,000 and we're on.
I would love to do that car with you. I mean, it would be so exciting to just.
I would love to as well. I think we would never get out of the creative phase, It
would be. It'd be like 6 hours of 6 years of like, what about this? What about that? Yeah, it's true, man. It's true.
We would need somebody to rein us in at some point.
I feel like the Vehicross could be a great platform, man, to turn into. I don't know if you could do that as an electric thing, because those cars are like $5,000, $10,000.
Really? Oh, that makes sense. Interesting. Well, how many people listen to this podcast?
I mean, at least 10 to 15 people.
Okay, maybe. Yeah. If anybody wants to finance the project, we have we have all the team ready to go. So
there are people on the phone standing by to take your call.
Exactly. Like at auctions,
That's right.
Offers more. No, ready to go. I mean, I would love to do something with my idea to become a car designer started in early 90s. My mother was working as a fashion designer, and she took me for a business trip in Japan. She was working with the Japanese industry ministry. And so she had to go a few times, and they took me to a visit at the Toyota factory. And I got so blown away by what I saw there that that's where the idea the inception of the idea got into my head of being a car designer. So to me, Japanese culture, it's like my, the thing I love the most about my childhood. I'm obsessed with Japan. I'm obsessed with it. Totally obsessed. I would love to live there. Well, I'll tell you what's interesting. You know what's interesting to me about, I find in some ways
the Japanese car, the aesthetics of car design in Japan, it's such a different language from the West. That
You
I
mean
feel like
now
you have
or
to,
back then? Because if you
still
see,
now and then.
it was very interesting to see how it evolved, because in the 70s it was very like copy and paste from Europe. You know, like you take the Toyota 2000 GT, it's very similar to a certain Opel GT, you know. And I think, for what I understand, and I'm not an expert in Japanese culture, but what I gather is that it was meant like a homage. Like it wasn't like copying, it was like getting inspired by people that were recognized as masters. And then what I loved is to see it evolve and, you know, like developing its own language, its own references, and then in the 80s and 90s, and I feel like in the 90s it's when it really started getting interesting, and then more recently I lost them. Like I don't understand it anymore. Like
I feel the same way.
Like I get like anxiety when I look at the Lexus, you know, they're you know.
You get agita.
But I love the Yaris GR. It's one of my favorite cars to come out of, you know, it's like a modern day Delta, really.
It is, but you know what's interesting? Like you look at that car and it's odd because it's not really attractive in any kind of conventional way, right?
But the Delta wasn't attractive in a conventional way when it came out. I mean,
I guess so.
It's gonna become attractive once we get used to it. I think
it's funny how design works that way, though, right? There's some design that you kind of just have to, like the Guara, for instance. You have you have to look at it. You have to absorb. You have to. It's funny. Like there are some designs you look at them and go, "Oh, that's beautiful," right away. Like the Hyundai and whatever that was, and then the Yaris. There's things you have to see. You have to kind of. Yeah, you have to get used to them. You have to see it again and again and again, and then you begin to understand.
To me, it's like that with music. You know, like music, it's something you either love an album right away or you think it's shit, and then for some reason you listen to it 3 times and then it clicks and you start getting it. And this is something
I'm always amazed by. Go on.
It's something about the process. Music, it's always very much involved in what we do. So when we start, especially with Restomods, we first create a playlist.
Interesting.
Yeah, and because you have to reference an era, mood, so it's really important for us to like get into it on a cultural
So what,
level.
for the Delta, were you just blasting like Lionel Richie, Dancing on the Ceiling?
Man, I made the best 80s playlist on earth. No, you have to.
That's a strong statement. You should make it available. Come on, you have to back that up and make it available.
Just look Automobili Amos by Borromeo de Silva on Spotify. It's there for everybody to enjoy. And it's actually, I will never say that we designed a great car, but we definitely made a great fucking soundtrack.
That's amazing, man. That is amazing. I was going to say, the thing that I find interesting about that, there's that click that happens when you don't get something and then you do get something is, that happens to me often with watches, I guess, but is that and when the click happens, I always am slightly shocked that I didn't get it before. Do you know what I mean? I always think, how could I have not seen this? And now suddenly I see it. What's the thing that made me see it versus 2 weeks ago, I didn't see it?
It's true. It's crazy because it's one of the few proofs you have of change. You know, usually
you're right.
We don't realize that we're changing. But for example, I changed my taste changed a lot in the last 10 years. I used to hate vegetables. Now I only eat vegetables, you know, that kind of
right.
stuff. But it happens over a very long time. These things can happen 1 minute to another. And it's very interesting. It's like Rocky said, you know, if you can change and I can change. You remember?
No podcast is complete without a quote from Rocky IV.
True.
But you know what else is interesting? And maybe it's because I'm an old geezer, but I think that what happens as you get older is you become accustomed to the idea that you kind of know yourself and you understand yourself. And then when I repeatedly have these experiences like, oh, I didn't see how genius it was, and now I do, I think, oh, I really don't understand myself at all.
It's true. I guess we're
to quote Rocky 2, I will break you. Should we just end the podcast on that?
you just broke me, actually. I'm staring in the vacuum, thinking about that.
You were. You just went off. I see. I just broke you, Borromeo. Look, man, we've been talking about almost 2 hours, so we probably should put it to a close. But man, it was such a delight having you on, man, and I really appreciate you coming on.
I still don't believe the Huayra is a good car, but.
Wait, okay, let me just say, we'll just finish this up. I need to get to the bottom of this. What you're talking about, like how it drives, how it looks, or everything?
I have no idea about how cars drive. I'm the one with the colored pencils.
Okay, I will say that in person, it's very impressive, and in pictures, from some particular angles, it looks super odd. But in some ways, it's not.
I'm just taking the piece at this point. I don't really believe in what I'm saying. I'm just doing to
it's my mission, man. It's my mission. By the end of the year, I want you to be making me an all cash offer for the Guara.
Actually, I'm coming to New York in October.
Oh, amazing.
Sorry. Oh, God, sorry. I ruined the whole podcast.
We have to start from scratch, man. Look, anyway, in conclusion, man, thank you again, Carlo, for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. It was great to see you. Great to talk to you, man. And I'll see you in October.
And you'll see me in October. Best get ready. I want the Jaguar ready.
Oh, you can drive it.
I'll let you know when I land, okay? You come and get me.
Oh, then you know what? Then just pack like a small, like a fanny pack. There's no space for anything else in the Jaguar. All right. Thanks again, man.
Great seeing you as always.
Likewise, man.
Thank you.
Ciao, man.